Um, Yesterday we talked about the previous 4 films being somber. Um, I don't think these films are somber, but I do feel like there's a deepening, a deepening, a going deeper into something, and how can I put this? There seems to be a kind of a more intensified, heightened emphasis or focus on your part, and yet at the same time a very interesting development, which is an increasing use of the focus or putting things into soft or out of focus to make, well, not to make anything, but that creates a sense of real mysteriousness about what we're actually experiencing. And I wonder if you could talk about that that impulse.
Well, I think what it was is I was at working with the open form, the kind of montage that I work with, that it became one is always interested in taking that open form into new areas. When it began, it was a very kind of just open exploration of the world, a discovery of the world, very clear, as we saw yesterday with the variations and so forth in Arbor Vitae. And I think with this, as I said, Stan Brakhage had died, and I just felt this impulse to see if I could move my open form more toward a magical, musical form, so that so I began to shoot in such a way that it wasn't I wasn't taking pictures of the world as much as I was creating notes, so to speak, notes and movements. And I wanted to see to what degree I could, have a language of color and shape. I was particularly today, every time, any projection of a film, especially I notice in mine, is a different experience. Not only, even if it's in the same room, there's something that happens. Each projection has its own emphasis. And for instance, this time, I was very, very taken by Compline, as a color film. It just seemed so deeply subtle, and everything that was going on in the color. So I think mainly that's the thing, Gavin. I was just trying to see if I could move it into an internal mood. A lot of the 3-4 films almost seem not winter as much, which is a description of the San Francisco winter, which is really not a winter but a rainy season and a verdant season. But I wanted to see if I could. The films almost are in the womb. They're almost like what life was like in the womb, or what emotional life is like before any kind of language, just when you're feeling kind of shapes and feelings. So I think it was trying to go back to prenatal, a documentary of prenatal experience.
So where Variations was you discovering the world as a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, now we're going even further, deeper, further back.
There must be something somewhere.
Well, does that account for something else that's very striking in these 4 films, which is that, with certain exceptions here and there, people have become much more spectral. They're shadows, they're glimpsed, they're fleeting, they're never really seen directly. There are exceptions, but it's very striking that this world this realm that you've sort of descended into is a realm that's not a realm where there are many people.
Well, I think again that's because of that it wasn't really a depiction of the world as much as it was a depiction of what it feels like inside, or deeply inside. You're trying to see could you make a film that touches on more of the core values, so to speak.
there's an extraordinary moment in Sarabande where you release us or break with what you've been doing with a very long, fast shot of a blue ribbon or a blue, and the shot continues for some time, and it's very rapid, and it really it's very bracing, and I'm sure that's completely intentional. Because you talked about this film in terms of dance, I sort of suddenly thought of the what do you call it? There's a particular type of dance involving material, the serpentine dance. I don't know if that was in your mind or if that works for you, but
I can tell you literally what it is. I live near Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, and there's a rose garden right where I live. And in the autumn, there's certain times they tie up the roses with these plastic blue-green kind of ribbon, I guess to hold things. And sometimes the sunlight, they're translucent, and the sunlight comes through them. So I think they just caught my eye, and then when I shoot, I have a very kind of spontaneous, intuitive relationship, not based on meaning, but just falling into the visual reality of things. And so I think I began to pan it, and then so what that is actually a succession of pans, very fast.
It creates a sense of real excitement.
Yeah. Yes, about time. And I think, what can I say? I mean, a film has a normal film has explosions, fight scenes, love scenes, so this is, an exciting moment.
I mean, the other kind of shift in the kind of weight of things is towards nature, towards plant life, towards flowers. There were always trees and branches in your films, but you seem to really have gravitated in this period of films towards nature.
Yeah. I guess I don't. Well, for one thing, I find plants to be really real allies. Allies to the psyche, and very healing. And of course, we're at a stage of human civilization where we've lost connection with that. It used to be for, a few 100,000 years, a very important part of human life would be to know the qualities of each plant and what each plant could offer you, both medicinally and psychically. And I don't know. I find using the plants as a subject for the language. Again, I'm not shooting the plants as objects, but they seem to offer me, I can't really explain it, but they seem to offer me a language, that they're there, they're offering so much. Everyone just walks by them, but they're always offering so much, and always ignored.
Just one last thing I want to touch upon before we get some questions, and that is towards the very end of Winter, there's a passage where you focus on the droplets on the car surface and the sun reflecting, and I felt that at a certain point some of those images became almost cosmic in their reach, and I'm curious as to why you suddenly felt that urge to have a kind of a cosmic moment.
I can tell you what actually happened, because this is how my films come about. Is I was in a parking lot of a supermarket, and I had parked my car to buy some food, and I got out, and right next to me was this brand new black SUV, highly polished, and it had just rained, and the sun was going in and out of the clouds. And I said, oh my gosh. And I said, I better shoot this right in a way, because whoever owns this car is not going to be nice. And so I quickly, luckily I had my tripod in my trunk of my car, and I started to shoot what you saw. And as I was shooting it, you know, the SUV type driver, at least in California, is a woman with a visor, you know, and so she came out and she said, "Oh, you can do that somewhere else." And she started up her car and pulled away. I actually had a shot of the car sliding out of frame, revealing just the asphalt, but I thought it was, I don't know, it just seemed like not such a good joke, not appropriate joke for the film somehow. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, one is always looking for things and things are offered, you know. And, yeah, the more cosmic, the better, you know. Yeah.
Okay, questions out there? Yes.
So you have such a deep connection to the stock. I mean, obviously, you know, what kind of stock you use is very deeply important to you. And first of all, thank you for these beautiful films. They're really exquisite.
Yeah, thank you.
But the reason I'm curious if you've ever worked digitally, and because many filmmakers now really don't have the opportunity to work in film, and so I'm just wondering if you have anything to say about the digital world and how sensual it can be, and if there's any hope for that, or because.
Well, you don't know. I don't know any more than anyone else. You know, I mean, I've been making film since I was 10. I love film. I love the whole thing. I like rewinds. I like an editing table. I like cutting the pieces up and pasting them together. I like projecting them. With at least the light, the film light seems more nurturing to me. A projector bulb seems more nurturing to me than a DCP projection, kind of it's more hospital-like. Of course, the technology will get better and better, and it'll be the reality for people. And I just have loved filmmaking, the whole thing. And I frankly would not want to sit home in front of a computer working on my movies. I wouldn't like that. I like being I like the physicality of it. I like the craft of it. It's something I learned when I was a teenager, and I just like it. And I'll do it as long as I can.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you could talk about the fact that your shots have a kind of floating trajectory, I think, almost.
Mhm.
The light will either open them up or close them down, or maybe the reflections will be just complex enough that they'll suddenly kind of become buoyant. And I'm wondering if you could talk about how you learned to shoot the world that way, to look at something. Are you like waiting for it to kind of happen, or have you found that you can coax certain kind of little tiny mini light events out of whatever you're shooting?
Well, one thing is that the primary subject of my films is light. Right? No matter what the film is, I mean, they're organized around light. And since cinema is light, it seems an appropriate subject for cinema. You know, so therefore, one is making films with light, about light, for a medium which is projected light. You know, that seems all very sensible to me. In San Francisco, the fog comes in a lot. And I live in a neighborhood just about where the fog starts to burn off, for coming in from the ocean. And so it's very, very common there, I think, very, very common that the fog is dodging the sun in and out. So if you're walking around, the day is going like this all the time. And I think, you know, it says, you know, if you go to if there's a painter you love, and you go to their native land, and you go, oh, you know, now I understand what their paintings were, you know, and so I always thought if someone comes to San Francisco and they know my films, they'll go, oh, this is what it's really like here. You know, it's not a made-up thing. So the undulating light sort of inspired me, and some of the shots in the films are the actual, and others are things I'm doing with the f-stop of the lens. And so it's an attempt to breathe life into the film, rather than the camera's just taking a picture of something you're putting on the screen, and so the screen's a window to that picture. No, it's more like you want the screen itself to be to fill with light, to darken, just as our psyches fill with hope and darken with fear, and you know, all that.
We have time for one more question. Yes. Yeah.
You, in your introduction, had made some allusions to music,
Yeah.
but I find that your films actually create a very profound language of silence that is more silent than anything else I've ever heard.
Palpable. Yeah.
Palpable.
You're right.
So I was wondering what the musical allusions were. Are they in your head?
Yeah, maybe it's just something I said. No. What I meant by it that actually was that rather than treating the screen as a stage, where the bottom of the screen is where the gravity is, and everything's resting on the bottom of the screen, which is kind of normal, I am more interested in using the screen as a floating world, a world that is of where the images have a quality of the psyche, and so forth. And yes, I think to make a great silent film, the images have to be of a nature which is, as you say, palpably quiet. There's if the images are based on language and it's silent, or a sort of language meaning in a way, and it's silent, it's a little flat, And so I think it's probably a natural part. I think the more sculptural. So the film has to be excessively successful as light sculpture to function silently. But once that's happening, it imbues the whole room with a palpable silence, and you can feel when the films are really working for an audience and everyone's working together in kind of a union on it, and it's kind of wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm holding my breath a lot of the time when I'm watching your films, and then I notice that and I start breathing again. Anyway, I'm afraid we're out of time, but I hope you're all here for the next show, and thank you, Nick.